is very clear confirmation that ETFs are a major price driver. They are a major catalyst. Now, when we think about this, it's not just Bitcoin, right? It's also Ethereum. We could see that Ethereum's ETFs really didn't start to pick up until we started to see the price of Ethereum go kind of crazy, which was in July. And we could see that this was some of the largest inflow timeframes for the Ethereum ETFs, which supported the push back to $4,800+, creating even a new all-time high on the price chart. And if we're thinking about this, the biggest question that we are asking ourselves is, what would an altcoin spot ETF look like? And we're not just talking about, one spot ETF, because remember, when we are looking at these ETFs, there is a ton of ETFs tied back to these assets. I mean, Bitcoin has a tremendous amount of, ETFs tied back to it, and so does Ethereum. So if we're thinking about altcoins, we're not just thinking about, oh yeah, let's see how good BlackRock's ETF is doing. No, it's going to be a combination of every single one of them and just how crazy the inflows can be for some of these altcoins. Now, of course, by now, you probably already know what I'm getting at, which is, yes, we're talking about XRP. We're talking about XRP's ETFs. We're talking about what could happen around XRP. We got to think about it logically, right? The third largest crypto asset, the strongest crypto asset, I would argue as well, outside of Bitcoin, right? Because again, a lot of people say, oh, well, Ethereum has been extremely strong and it's been stronger than XRP. Well, number one, I'm not talking about just market position. I'm not talking about, the value of XRP compared to Ethereum or anything like that. What I'm talking about is the resilience, right? XRP went through hell back in 2021, but still, we managed to stay in the top 10. I mean, think about that, right? In the middle of a lawsuit, delisted from all major exchanges, the worst environment around, a crypto project ever, and XRP still managed to remain in the top 10. That is something that we need to address. It goes to show you how confident XRP holders are, number one. Number two, how strong the community around XRP is. And then also, we need to address the fact that XRP is a completely different altcoin. I've always said this, I will continue to say it as well. XRP is not your typical altcoin in this market. All right. It is a completely different beast. But on top of that, let's talk about a few things. Number one, let's go over here real quick to what Bradley Duke put out over on X, which is the US ETF inflows alone are mopping up all new Bitcoin supply. Bitcoin investors are definitely more bullish. Now, yeah, when we look at the ETF inflows and when we look at the Bitcoin supply, this is going to impact Bitcoin greatly. It's always going to impact something like Bitcoin or even Ethereum. I mean, technically speaking, with all of the buy and demand from ETFs and even from Tom Lee's company, as well as other companies as well, it seems as though the supply for both Bitcoin and Ethereum is starting to diminish greatly on these exchanges. Now, when we're thinking about this, a lot of people will say that there's no way that this could happen to altcoins because the demand's just not going to be there. I would argue that this is extremely flawed logic. I really do think that we will see the supply diminish greatly for the first altcoin to get a spot ETF approval. Now, if we're thinking about that, we go over here to the SEC update from the 8th of this month, which was SEC approval of listing standards can mainstream crypto ETFs. The SEC's proposed generic listing standards could streamline crypto ETF approvals from 240 days to just 60 to 75 days, opening doors for altcoin funds. We are waiting patiently for a major update from this because we gotta understand that if we see the SEC streamline this process, all of these altcoin ETFs that we have been tracking and watching and waiting for approval, it is going to streamline that entire process, and we are going to see altcoin ETFs trading live in a very, very quick manner. Now, yes, we're still looking at XRP here because XRP is at the top of the list in my opinion. I really do think that XRP should have first mover advantage here with the ETFs. It's hard to say. I mean, Solana is definitely up there as well, so we got to kind of watch, wait, and see. But I really do think that XRP should have first foot through the door. But we just really don't know for certain. But I will say this, okay? There is a tremendous amount of ETFs out there awaiting approval. The SEC is working on this framework. I'm telling you guys that right now. I feel like they kind of knew that this was going to be needed anyways. So the fact that this is being worked on right now tells me that we should have this in place within the next month or two. And by that point, we could already see the first altcoin ETF, trading live. It wouldn't shock me at all. But on top of all of this, we have over here from Matt Hogan from Bitwise. What impact will generic listing standards have on the crypto ETP space? Well, here's what happened when the SEC passed the ETF rule in late 2019, which created generic listing standards for traditional ETFs. The pace of ETF launches rose from 117 per year to 370 per year. Expect the same kind of expansion if generic listing standards come to crypto this fall. And this is what I mean, right? Like, this would open up the waterfall moment for ETFs in the US for crypto. We're not there yet, but if we think about what happened in the traditional space, 117 per year to 370 is shocking. But think about crypto, right? How many altcoin projects want to have an ETF? Or let me rephrase that. How many asset management companies want an ETF for Dogecoin, for Sui, for Solana, for Avalanche, for this altcoin, for that altcoin, for this project, for that project? Guys, the demand around altcoin ETFs right now is red hot. So I do think that if we see the generic listing standards come out for crypto ETFs, the impact will be very significant. This will be a waterfall moment for ETFs. But on top of this, remember that XRP still has 12 issuers with 18 different ETF products tied back to it. Big shout out to XRP_Crow for this. We're still watching. We are watching this patiently. Now, number 12 on this list, Rex Shares from Osprey Funds. They have $8 billion in assets under management. Okay. This ETF is set to launch this week. Now, this will be the first official US ETF offering spot exposure to XRP. This is very bullish. And we have the announcement here from Rex Shares as well. The Rex Osprey XRP ETF XRPR is coming this week. It will be the first US ETF to deliver investors spot exposure to the third largest cryptocurrency by market cap. This ETF is very important to focus on and track because this is going to give the green light to any issuer that's still on the sidelines, cough, cough, BlackRock, right? It's going to give them a lot of data to go off of to really make the argument of if and should they apply for an XRP ETF. Again, I think that this is going to be a very significant moment. I also think that it's very bullish for the demand side of XRP because this is 80% spot, right? That could severely impact the demand around XRP, the value of XRP, and I think that this is something almost everyone should be watching because it could significantly change XRP in a big way. And when I say change XRP, I mainly mean the value and the demand around XRP, the volume as well. So I'm watching this. Now, on top of that, talking about the demand, talking about the value, Zach Rector put out a post regarding him asking Grok, so AI, what are the top ETFs filed under the 40 Act? Which, by the way, this is under the 40 Act. We have here, it is already noting how big the XRP ETF could be, 150 million to 20 billion debut surge inflow potential. And here we have the top rankings, SPY, IVV, VTI, G Bitcoin, E. This is Ethereum E, which is the leading Ethereum ETF, and then SSK, XRPR, the emerging leader pending launch, and then DOJE. Now, we have the notes here. So data on assets under management for XRPR and DOJE is speculative until post-launch, but initial inflows could mirror SSK's $150 million or G Bitcoin's $20 billion debut surge. depending on market sentiment. And I do agree. I mean, listen, we could see some very significant inflows around XRP. I don't think that we will see $20 billion, but I do think that we could quickly see $5 billion plus hitting XRP. And I'm not the only one that thinks this. I mean, here we have from Paul Barron Network, right? This is Canary Capital CEO saying that the XRP ETF can do $5 billion in its first month and can outperform Ethereum from pure financial services. You guys remember this clip? I'll play it real quick just to kind of remind you guys. Check it out.
Into this. The Ripple ETF or XRP ETF approval odds right now on Polymarket hovering at around 86%. So one of its highest points, but it looks like this is going to happen. And what is the likelihood of the timing for this right now?
I would guess that XRP would probably be this year. Either Eric or James from Bloomberg simply said, well, if there's futures at Coinbase, then you probably get an ETF in 2025.
Your statement at that time was $5 billion in the first month. Are you still holding to that? Do you think that's a possibility?
I really am. I would say after Bitcoin, XRP is probably the most well-known on Wall Street and on finance circles. And then ETH is actually probably number 3. So if you think about it that way, I do believe that XRP could potentially outperform ETH just from, pure financial services standpoint.
Into this, the Ripple ETF.
Now, again, if we're thinking about this, right, it really does provide us with an insight just from, again, this is coming from a CEO of a company that is clearly already experienced within the ETF side of the game. Someone that also understands the value of XRP, realizes the demand around XRP. I mean, if you just studied XRP in the last 24 months, you could see what XRP is capable of doing. $5 billion is definitely a good starting point. I actually think that's a very conservative starting point as well, especially when we compare this back to Crypto.com CEO, which we have over here. Remember this, CEO of Crypto.com said XRP ETFs are going to attract $8 billion of investor inflows in 2026. The times we saw XRP below 2 digits are numbered. Now, I don't believe so, but listen close to this video clip.
Next couple of years, I think altcoins that have strong flows will outperform. I don't know if you guys seen this, but there's a forecast saying that the ETF for XRP is going to attract 8 billion of inflows next year. So you can imagine what kind of impact that may have. And in terms of what we're doing, I think we have a very clear, differentiated, exciting strategy that nobody else is pursuing and nobody else can compete with us on. That's very unique. So we will build it, and I hope you guys join along for the ride.
And yeah, I mean, listen, when we're thinking about what's going on here, I mean, the values are definitely, around the $5 to $10 billion range. Listen, XRP in the first month, we are going to know how big this can be in that first month. The first month, listen, I want you guys to realize that first month is the most important time frame for the ETF. It doesn't matter 6 months after the launch, 12 months after the launch, it does not matter. Even if we're thinking about ETFs, right? We go back to the Ethereum ETF. Okay, Ethereum's ETF, the first month was horrible. And that stuck with Ethereum for months. In fact, it stuck with Ethereum all the way up until, roughly June of this year. We're talking about a whole almost year of just underperformance from the Ethereum spot ETFs. And everyone said that Ethereum is dead. Ethereum ETFs are terrible. Nobody wants them. They're useless. And now they are one of the biggest ETFs out there. It has outperformed Bitcoin on multiple occasions. And this is why I say that the first month is so important, because although, yes, Ethereum is performing very well, everyone is still reminded that Ethereum just completely did nothing in the first month of the ETF going live. So the best part about this is, if we are going to see very significant traction around XRP, if we're going to start to see these ETFs doing billions and billions of dollars in that first month, that's going to put a huge spotlight on XRP. That's going to lead to this catalyst not just being a huge catalyst for XRP, but it's going to be a massive catalyst for the fact that, number one, XRP is in high demand from institutional players and retail. Also, number two, it's going to lead to these companies that we already have treasury companies lined up, but it's going to lead to a ton of additional treasury companies lining up to, tap into XRP. And then also the recognition, right? The media recognition